So today we finally got a green day for Tesla stock, and if we take a look into the S&P 500 index ETF SPY, we see here as well it was a green day. Now this morning in the Push Your Profit private group, I said we'll seize the opportunity when the market swings back up and starts advancing, as I believe there's a promising potential for that. And so in this video, I want to go ahead and break down where we're currently at in the economy, what we're seeing with Tesla stock, and also cover a few things as far as the mega cap earnings that we just had, like Apple and Amazon. Now in the Push and Profit private group, I shared that Apple beat its revenue expectations. However, one of the other things I showed was the further breakdown for Apple. And if we actually parse through it, we see that Apple did not do well on its iPad revenue, nor its production revenue, nor its iPhone revenue, nor its wearables, which is basically like the AirPods, etc., and the Apple Watch. But then it did beat on its Mac revenues, and then also as well as its service revenue. Yet we still saw Apple stock fall down. Now, one of the things I often mention to the Push and Profit private group is that there is a lot of nuance when it comes to really parsing through these earnings calls. It's not just about can a company beat its revenue expectations. There's a lot of different variables, and one of the other things I mentioned is that you always want to pay attention to the forward guidance. And honestly, I was on the call for the Apple earnings call, and the forward guidance wasn't that great. However, on the other end, we saw that Amazon stock did rally up, and they actually did have a good earnings, and their forward guidance was pretty much spot on. But I'm not gonna lie, something that probably did help Amazon stock out a lot is the amount of times that they mentioned the word AI in this earnings call. I mean, at one point, literally in the call, we heard Amazon say that they have AI implemented in every aspect of the business. I mean, they're basically telling us they have AI in their toilet paper. Right now, that's just a silly joke. But, with that said, I wanna go ahead and cover, what this means for Tesla stock and the overall market. We're having, two big mega cap stocks, with one not doing too well and then the other one actually doing extremely well. But on top of that, we also got some economic data today, with the US jobless claims edging up higher last week. Now, this economic data that we got today was slightly bullish because we saw that the initial jobless claims rose up last week, and we know that the Federal Reserve, they're paying attention to the labor market, and they keep mentioning over and over again that they want to see the labor market stifle a bit. Yet at the same time, where we saw more workers filing for unemployment last week, we still see that unemployment is still relatively low, suggesting that we still have a robust job market. But of course, one of the main things we want to pay attention to is Friday, which is tomorrow, where we get the US non-farm payrolls, we get the US unemployment rate, US hourly wages, etc. So we have a lot of data that is coming out tomorrow, and this data is really going to go ahead and shape the direction for the overall market going forward for the next couple of weeks, before we have the Jackson Hole meeting with the Federal Reserve. But with that said, I want to go ahead and kind of just hop into my laptop and break down a couple of things when it comes to Tesla stock and the overall market. But real quick, before we hop into my laptop, I also want to let you guys know that there is a link to join my free weekly newsletter, where every single Sunday I drop a newsletter that is really pertaining to what's going on in the overall market, and it's just pretty much information that's pertinent for any market participant, whether you're investing long term or trading in the short term, and it is completely free. So definitely go ahead and check out that link in the description below and sign up with that newsletter, or for that newsletter. And with that said, let's truly go into my laptop. Alrighty, so we are officially in my laptop. We're taking a look at Tesla stock on a 4-hour time frame. We see this beautiful green day, and there's a ton that I want to cover in this video, but of course I'm going to go ahead and condense it, or just make it as concise as I possibly can, while still, making sure that there's good, valuable information here. Now, I know some individuals that have made it this far in this video may be wondering, why are you talking about Apple stock, and why are you talking about Amazon stock? All I care about is Tesla stock, right? And while I would definitely understand that question, it's reasonable to ask that, I want to go ahead and take a step back and kind of explain the reasoning behind why, I'm pretty much focusing on the earnings of these two mega cap stocks. So we know Amazon, Apple, two of the biggest mega cap stocks in the market, right? They had their earnings. And we have to understand that these two companies have a huge weighting in a lot of the indexes, like the S&P 500, right? And so two things, right? We want to pay attention to how these big companies are doing, because it kind of paints a picture of how the economy is doing, right? But it also kind of paints this perception of market sentiment, right? Because of course, if both companies did bad, well, that would give this perception that, oh, well, the market's not that great. And it bleeds, everything's interconnected, right? And I know that may sound confusing. I'll go ahead and talk about a few other things in more detail with Tesla, and then I'll kind of touch back into Amazon and Apple, and then talk about some other things that are related that we want to be aware of, right? So zooming into today, we saw Tesla stock. If we map it out from the open of today, pretty much to the close, we saw we did around 3.18%. So definitely a great day upwards. We see that we had some strong movement in the beginning of the market. We had some pullbacks, but of course, the overall trend was upwards, right? Now, one of the things I told the Push and Profit private group, which unfortunately, it's not something that I'm able to update on YouTube live, right? That's the whole reason why I have the Push and Profit private group, where I could go ahead and update trade ideas and talk about what are my outlooks, and that's the whole part of or the whole point of the briefings. I can't do that on YouTube, right? I just don't have access to do that. But one of the things I told the members in the Push and Profit private group this morning is that my strategy right now is to really go ahead and take advantage of the fact that the market has sold off quite a bit. For example, if we take a look into the SPY, the S&P 500 index ETF, we see that we've been pretty much selling off, right? We see that it started around over here, the 27th, right? And then, of course, we had another day climbing up. We had a day moving sideways. But then for the last two trading sessions, we didn't have a lot of positive buying or good selling pressure over here. In fact, it was inverse, where we saw a lot of selling pressure. And so one of the things I told the Push and Profit private group is that my strategy isn't merely to just ride the downturn. In fact, I want to go ahead and capitalize the fact that we sold off and take advantage of this bounce. Right now, of course, I did call out some trade ideas for AMD. For example, at one point, let's go ahead and see if I could find it. Let me see. When did I call it out? I can't screen share, the private chat, because there's obviously things that I want to keep exclusive for the members of the chat. But let me just scroll over. So 12:33 p.m. I said AMD idea call out for 112.55 for the calls, or the strike price for the call as a pullback. And so I'm sorry, I said that wrong. But what I'm trying to say is that basically for AMD stock, one of the things I called out is that, hey, if we hit $112.55, which was right around, if we kind of zoom in, we hit it almost to the penny right around over here, where we see that the low was $112.47. I said that's when I want to go ahead and take a quick scalp trade by buying some calls. And if you would have taken that trade, it was approximately like a 30% return for something that was really just a trade that really lasted, I don't know, what was this, like 5 minutes or so, right? 15 minutes, right? So definitely a great call out today. But, one of the things I also pointed out to the Push and Profit private group, not only that I expect, a bounce for the overall market and I want to take advantage of these low points, but I also talked about Apple a little bit. And I want to go ahead and kind of pan our focus over to Apple. I know, the purpose of this video is kind of to talk about Tesla, but don't worry, I'm going to go ahead and break that down, right? So let's go ahead and go to Apple. Let's go ahead and go to this weekly time frame, right? So one of the things I told the Push and Profit private group at 9:38 a.m. was that the valuation of Apple appears overextended, aligning with the overall elevated market levels, right? We see Apple definitely benefited so much in the last quarter, especially with the AI buzzword, just like a lot of the tech stocks. However, we're seeing a lot of selling pressure, right? We're starting to see that. And I said that, the combination of technical analysis and then this stretch valuation suggests a potential drawback for Apple's growth pace, right? It shows signs of potential deceleration, right? And so, I said, we want to pay attention to the earnings. And of course, what did we get when we heard the earnings, right? We saw that Apple did beat its revenues, right? And so that's good. But as I said earlier, and what I tell the Push and Profit private group is that there's a lot of nuance into the earnings. We saw that Apple missed on a lot of specific places in its business that didn't do too well. And then of course their earnings call wasn't that great as well when it comes to their forward guidance. And so we're seeing Apple kind of start to fall downwards. And then I also kind of touched a little bit on Amazon as well. So let's go ahead and talk about Amazon, and then I promise we'll go ahead and talk about Tesla and a couple of other things we want to pay attention to. And the reason I'm talking about Apple and Amazon is because I'm going to go ahead and tie this all back together. So please stay with me. I know some individuals kind of want to jump off, but I promise it's going to all make sense, right? So when we're taking a look at Amazon, right, one of the things I mentioned to the Push and Profit private group later on in the day was that we kind of see like this reverse head and shoulders pattern right over here, right, which is pretty bullish. But then we also see this rising trend line, which is bullish. And then of course we had their earnings, which was pretty good, right? And so from a technical perspective, from a fundamental perspective, things are looking good on Amazon. So we're in this area right now. Let's go ahead and go back to Tesla, where we have two major companies. One did kind of bad on their earnings, right? And also projected that their future earnings may not be that great. And then we had another company that did pretty solid, right? And so that kind of puts us somewhere in the middle where we're like, okay, well, we had one good, one bad. Well, what does that mean going forward for the overall market, and how does this tie into Tesla? Well, one of the things I told the group was like, hey, we want to pay attention to these earnings, because these earnings, along with the data that we're getting tomorrow, right, which I showed you guys, which was the non-farm payroll as well as like unemployment rate, etc., is going to go ahead and kind of determine the shape of the market for the next week, right? And so the announcements that we got from the earnings kind of puts us at a sideways range with both Apple and Amazon. If we go to the S&P 500, tomorrow it kind of puts us split in the middle, one good, one bad. And so what's really going to kind of really shape the decision is this job data. And what do we want to see with this job data? Well, it's kind of difficult, right? We're in a difficult place where, in one sense, we do want to see the labor market cool off, but not to an area where we're seeing just a mania of people getting fired and laid off, right? And people not getting jobs and unemployment spiking up to like 8%. That would be horrific. That would be bad, right? But we do want to see some softening, something that suggests that the economy could keep going, right? While also still seeing that jobs will decrease to help fight inflation. Because again, the Federal Reserve has a dual mandate. Yeah, they're fighting inflation, and that's part of their mandate about making sure that there's price stability. But what is their other mandate, right? Well, their other mandate is to maximize employment. So it's not that the Federal Reserve is just like a bunch of like evil men kind of just sitting in a circle around a campfire with hoods on, trying to make sure the world gets ruined. That's not their job. They have a dual mandate to obviously ensure price stability and maximum employment. And so the job data tomorrow is going to have a huge influence on where we see things going. Now, one of the things I've been saying for the on YouTube, right, is that I'm bullish on Tesla in the long term, but bearish on the short term, right? Now, I got someone that commented on a previous video saying, "Oh, look, Tesla went up today. You said you were bearish in the short term." I'm not saying that Tesla's not going to have any green days at all. That'd be ridiculous. When do we ever see the market just go straight down forever, right? That doesn't happen, right? It's not like it just goes down. We generally see things go down, maybe sideways, then go up a little, then further down. That's just the nature of how the market works, right? And so, of course, at any moment, we could have positive data that could shift Tesla upwards. But recently, I've been pretty bearish on Tesla, specifically because, at the end of the day, things have not been looking good, both from a technical perspective. We see this descending trend line, but also we're still seeing a lot of macroeconomic headwinds coming into place. In fact, in Apple's earnings call, if you guys were able to listen to it, I should have counted it, or I honestly should have taken a shot every time they mentioned this, although that would probably be heavily intoxicated. But they mentioned, the concern for the macroeconomic environment quite a bit in their earnings call, right? And so that puts a little bit of a pressure going into the next few quarters. And so one of the things I told the Push and Profit private group, and I also said on YouTube, is, hey, for this quarter, we're going to see a lot of companies hit and then, and do well, and a lot of companies miss, right? And so that's what we've been seeing. But going into the next quarter, what we're probably going to see is a lot more misses, unless there's data to, go ahead and kind of shift things around. But right now, things are still not looking good. And so, what does this mean for someone who's trading Tesla or investing in Tesla, right, in the long term, right? Because obviously trading and investing, two separate vehicles, and you should approach them differently. So obviously trading Tesla, in the short term, I'm still going to go ahead and pay attention to what happens in the price action. We could very well see Tesla, go back up and get rejected, and that'll be an opportunity to obviously short again. Or we could see Tesla break above this trend line, right? At the end of the day, yeah, I say this all the time, and it's important that I reiterate this and kind of just reinforce it, because a lot of people have this confusion when it comes to technical analysis, but stocks don't have to adhere to whatever you draw on the chart. It's important to remember that. And so it's really just to measure where we're currently at. And so, that's what I want to see with Tesla. Now, that's being kind of bullish, saying, it will go up to that area and we'll see if it gets rejected or breaks below. But what about the bear case? Well, we could still see Tesla out of the picture, that we can't see Tesla still fall down even further. In fact, when we look at the volume profile, we see that there's very little volume relative to price around this area over here, which suggests that if there is selling pressure and we go through this area, well, when there's very little volume relative to price and there's either buying pressure, well, it's going to move upwards, or if there's selling pressure, it's going to have the big moves downwards. Why? Well, when there's very little volume relative to price, which is different from your traditional volume relative to time, well, that means that it could put, when there's a lot of buying pressure, it'll push up the order books. When there's selling pressure, it'll push down the order books. I'm just trying to simplify it and go over it, because I say this very often. And, I hate that I have to kind of repeat myself in these videos, but it's at the end of the day, someone new may be watching this video. And so I want to go ahead and make sure that everyone kind of understands what is my overarching view on Tesla and the overall economy, right? It's important that I go ahead and break this down, right? I don't want to leave anyone out in the woods or just confused, So with that said, in the bear case, if Tesla does continue going down, well, the area I want to go ahead and watch is around this low $200 area, because that's where we see that there has been a resistance in the past. It's also been a support in the past, and that's where we also see like price consolidate. Why? Because there's a lot of volume relative to price. And so that's, the bear case. The bull case is, seeing it rally up to here, but then seeing what it does around this level. And so that's pretty much what I'm looking at when it comes to Tesla in the short term. Now, as far as Tesla in the long term, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. If Tesla sells off more, well, that's just, a buying opportunity for me to add more into my long-term portfolio. I mean, it's very simple. I don't really have to explain dollar cost averaging. I think many people are familiar with that, or hopefully many people are familiar with that. But, if Tesla goes up, well, the more the merrier, right? I didn't get an opportunity to buy Tesla at these dips. There's times where I just unfortunately don't have unlimited capital to deploy at every single dip. And that's going to be, something that happens, right? At this time, I put more into the index funds. If you guys don't know, when it comes to my long-term portfolio, I mostly invest in index funds, with the exception of a few individual stocks like Tesla, Microsoft, etc., right? And so, at the end of the day, you have to do whatever you guys see value in. You shouldn't just copy whatever I say. You should only invest or trade in whatever you see value in. And if you are bullish on Tesla in the long term, then if Tesla falls down, well, that's just an opportunity for you to go ahead and take advantage of the discrepancy between price and value and add more. But if you're not believing into Tesla's vision, well, I don't want to sound like a Tesla zealot by saying that. That almost sounds like I'm part of like some, let me not go there. But if you, not to say if you see Tesla's vision, but if you are optimistic of Tesla in the long term, then Tesla coming down is really just a gift for you if you're a long-term investor. Simple as that. But with that being said, guys, I want to keep this video very short, sweet, and concise. Make sure to check out the free weekly newsletter, where every single Sunday you get an update of what's going on in the overall market. It's free, so why not get that? And I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care, guys.